The cage you don't see. Imagine this. You're standing in an open field, no fences, no walls, just infinite space. But you can't move, you feel an invisible pressure, like chains you never chose, pulling you back. You weren't tied up, you were trained not to walk. You could scream, but somewhere inside, a quieter voice whispers, "Why bother?" Not because it's hopeless, because you've been told you're too small to matter. From the time you could speak, you were handed a script. Be good, obey, don't ask too many questions. Fit in. Every reward you got was for compliance. Every punishment, for rebellion. And so, you began to shrink yourself. Not because you were weak, but because they taught you that your strength was dangerous. Why do so many people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that numb them, lives they didn't choose? Why do you scroll for hours, secretly desperate for a life you're afraid to believe you deserve? What if powerlessness isn't your natural state, but a carefully implanted illusion? If you've ever felt like something deep within you is asleep, this is not a coincidence. It's the result of something much older, much deeper, and far more deliberate than you think. Let's go there. You weren't born powerless, you were conditioned to be. From the moment you could walk, the world began whispering what was acceptable. Not what was true, not what was real, just what was safe, for them. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But society fears this too. A fully realized individual is unpredictable, untamed, and systems, whether schools, corporations, or even families, do not thrive on unpredictability. They thrive on obedience, so instead of teaching you to know yourself, they taught you to perform yourself. They replaced your inner compass with rewards and punishments. They called it success, but it was really a costume. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. He wasn't speaking in metaphors. He was speaking to you. Because every time you felt an instinct to break the mold, to speak up, to say no, to choose differently, you were met with disapproval or silence. So you learned the quiet art of self-abandonment. And over time, the inner voice you were born with? It became a whisper, then an echo, then nothing. Here's the most dangerous part. You didn't just learn to obey others. You learned to doubt yourself. Not because your instincts were wrong, but because they were inconvenient to a system designed to keep you small. So when you feel that chronic hesitation, that fear of taking up space, it's not weakness. It's programming, and if it was installed, it can be uninstalled. But before we get there, you need to see how deep the damage really goes. You go through your day believing you're making choices. But what if most of those choices were never yours to begin with? You pick the safe job. You bite your tongue in conversations. You tolerate the loneliness, the boredom, the quiet sense of not living. You tell yourself it's fine, that it's normal, but deep down, something aches. That ache is not weakness. It's your real self knocking on the walls of its own prison. The longer you carry this conditioning, the more invisible it becomes. You start calling it, just who I am, but it's not you, it's what was done to you. Psychologists call it learned helplessness, when you've been trained to believe your actions have no impact, even when they do. Neurologically, your brain wires itself around these beliefs. The more you obey them, the stronger they get, until disobedience doesn't even occur to you. This is how powerlessness becomes your identity, not because it's natural, but because it's familiar. And the brain clings to the familiar, even when it hurts. Aldous Huxley warned of this future, not one ruled by fear, but by comfort, by a society that doesn't chain you with violence, but with pleasure, distraction, and quiet despair. You scroll, you numb, you sleep with your eyes open. And here's the most haunting part. You might live your whole life this way, and never realize it. You might mistake comfort for peace, numbness for safety, obedience for wisdom. You were taught to survive in a cage, but the cage has no door. You are the one holding the key, and you don't know it yet. What if the rebellion doesn't start with shouting or fighting, but with a single, silent thought? What if they were wrong about me? That is the first crack in the illusion. The moment you stop blindly trusting the voices that told you who you're supposed to be, and start listening for the voice that was buried beneath them. Rebellion doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like walking away from what's killing you. Sometimes it's refusing to hate yourself for not fitting in. The world taught you to betray your inner compass. But you can unlearn that. You can choose, in any moment, to stop outsourcing your authority. To stop waiting for permission to become whole. Viktor Frankl, a man who found meaning in the darkest places imaginable, once said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. They can shape your circumstances, but they can't own your mind, unless you let them." And here's the truth no one ever told you. The system isn't afraid of violence. It's afraid of clarity, of people who wake up and realize they were never broken, only blinded. Because a person who sees clearly cannot be controlled, you don't need to fight the world to be free. You need to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And then, act from that place. Yes, it will be lonely at first. Yes, it will be terrifying. But freedom always is, because it's not given, it's taken back. Everything you've been told about yourself is a story written by others to keep you small. But the deepest truth is far simpler and more terrifying than any script. You are both the prisoner and the prison. You are both the lock and the key. The power you seek is not hidden out there, in systems or people, but inside you, waiting to be claimed. This is the paradox. You were taught to feel powerless, so you wouldn't reach for power. But power is not a weapon to wield against the world. It's the quiet authority to say yes to yourself, and no to everything that dims your light. Arthur Schopenhauer said, "Compassion is the basis of morality. And compassion, first and foremost, for yourself, is the beginning of freedom." This freedom is not a destination. It is a continuous, brave act of awakening. A daily rebellion against the lies you were fed. A radical love for your own existence. Look closely. Your wounds, your doubts, your fears, they are not chains, but doorways. When you step through, you realize the cage was never outside. It was the shadow you feared facing. And the moment you do, you break every chain. This is the ultimate truth. You were never powerless. You were taught to forget your power. Now, it's time to remember.